Thanks everyone for joining. Today we're talking about like leadership or influence without using authority. And I'll start off by introducing myself. So I'm Ryan. I've been at Misplay, which is like a gaming, ad tech, and Android app startup. I've been there for about 4 years. And I think basically over the course of time, as I've kind of grown with the company, it's been a really interesting challenge to think about. Like it's very exciting to think about proposing an idea to the CEO or talking to a VP about a new project. And honestly, I've like failed a bunch of times, but also like just love the Tarot community for thinking about like communication, caring, empathy, listening, relationship building, all those things that are the non-technical side that are actually super critical for continuing to grow. So super excited to kind of just share a bit of my experience. I'm also expecting to learn a lot from our discussion, but I'll just kick things off with a presentation from what I've seen on my side. Oh, here's some other things that I enjoy in my free time. So yeah, over the course of today, I just want to unpack kind of something that's, I think, super common, almost to the point where it's like, the gold standard is like companies saying we're data driven. Like it's not the highest paid person in the room. It's what the data actually says. And like on the surface, that is awesome. But I want to just throw out the secondary possibility about what really drives decision-making at a company. And that is relationships. Not in a sense of who knows who's in the in crowd, but like, really honestly, like trusting someone who's new to the company, helping onboard, working with them, and caring, empathy, things like this, listening, helping other people, and then having that result in a good relationship, which ultimately results in collaboration going forward. And I actually took a hone class on this as part of being a manager at Misplay. We take some training. So I was inspired by them. They're a great site for leadership training. I would recommend checking it out. And then I'm going to go through a bunch of examples for like IC and manager situations where we're going to talk about some influence styles, and we'll just look at specific like engineering, software engineering focused examples. So let's just talk a little bit more about this idea that like is common at most companies where, the best idea wins. I think we've heard that, and that's just where I still am often. And I just want to say like, yeah, I might get into some more examples later, but like just for myself, like developing a proof of concept, sharing it with folks, and expecting that like this thing that's going to help the company's bottom line is just going to get picked up by the team overall, I think has been a misunderstanding on my part about what that means. So what I have kind of been unpacking, and what I'm proposing is that like, and also from this class, as you can see, the source, there needs to be a place of shared trust, right? And building that up ahead of time is actually really critical. So yeah, I guess we'll just keep going through the slides. Basically, instead of just presenting like, oh, this data shows that we're going to double revenue or have 1% increase in revenue, whatever is important in the next year, you can actually start off by already knowing the people that you're talking with. So I think if you're making a request, it's very helpful to not cold message people. And sometimes this isn't possible, but ideally it is possible. We're going to talk about 5 different types of influence that also the Hone class kind of outlined. And I think this is a helpful framework to think about, well, when I'm making requests to people or when I'm proposing ideas, what kind of influence am I applying here? And would there be another option that might have a different result? And basically the fundamental piece that I'm kind of proposing for all of this is, okay, let's think about this from the other person's perspective, and how can I add value to them? and trust that over like a 1 year time span working with them, or 5 years or 30 years in my career of helping others, that will actually kind of counterintuitively ultimately be what really helps myself in the end. But we're getting there as a team, and I'm trying to focus on evangelizing my ideas based on solving other people's challenges and blockers, and based on their mission and values. So let's talk about the 5 styles of influence. And I actually want to kind of improvise a scenario here for each of these 5 styles, where I am knocking on your door on a Saturday morning. You're stepping away from family. You've got a cup of coffee in your hand. You're greeting me at the door. And my goal from this conversation is for you to hand me $100. And I'm using this model and metaphor because it's actually not unlike what we do every day, or what I have done and tried to do on LinkedIn sometimes, messaging like a VP or manager at Google or another startup or something, and just asking for time. Like literally, they might be talking with their family and after work, and they can choose to respond to me, and that might be $100, cost of their time. Or even, let's say, as a manager now, I can ask someone on my team to do something, but really I'm asking for a couple hours of their time, which is worth, hundreds of dollars to ask for time. So basically, with asserting, I'm knocking on your door and I say, I want you to give me $100. So that's one option for what I could do there. Okay. Next option, rationalizing why. So I could say, I have expenses on my side. I need gas for my car, and I'm buying groceries this week. So the thing to keep in mind here is that other people also have their perspective on why I might need $100, or it kind of leaves out their context and their interpretation of the data that's available. And of course, with this example, I think really underselling rationalizing. Oftentimes, having data can be important, but let's just try continuing with this model to think about this approach. So with disagreeing and commitment, I think the option would be them saying no, or them saying, like, I guess you saying to me, here's $5. And this would be a good option to accept, say thanks, and walk away. But I think that basically with actually inspiring people, with the $100 example, I could think about how could I add value for them? And this would be ideal with like a friend or a family member or someone with pre-existing trust. But also, if I'm knocking on your door on a Saturday morning, I could literally, observe that your grass needs to be mowed, and I could say, I'd like to, I'm not talking about it from my perspective. I'm saying I see this as something, could I do lawn work for you for 4 hours? Could I run groceries? Think about something that is blocking from your side, and not even bring up what I'm looking at until later. And actually, I think it would be assumed that, we don't want to be transactional in the long run, but it would be assumed that, if I do this, then it would be kind of a service. And the last style is actually having a coalition, which we'll talk about from an engineering perspective. But I think that in the context of, offering a service in a cold, knock on the door sort of a way, basically this would be like, if I come to you and say, hey, I'd like to mow your lawn, and also here's a stack of references from neighbors on the street, on the block, who I've worked with before. You can read about how happy they are, and I'm kind of coming at you with a host of people who support this project that I'm working on. And so we can look at all of these in an engineering context next. So we've got a couple mid-level engineer proposals, and then also, even as a manager, asking a direct report to do something, or trying to influence another team is what I want to get into next. I think we're going along pretty quickly, so there'll be plenty of time for discussion afterwards. So let's just take this example. We're halfway through the slides. As an engineer, I could build a proof of concept, and in my free time, nights and weekends, put together something above and beyond. And like, to me, this actually sounded like a perfect idea. In my second year at the company, I like redesigned our homepage and dropped a demo in like a company thread completely out of context, just saying, hey, this looks awesome. This is a pretty new UI. And it went basically nowhere. And I was shocked because I actually put a lot of time into it, but I hadn't built any relationships. I was in this conversation without any, existing like trust or support from anyone specifically. And so I think that it can actually feel like I'm undermining the product direction, or I just am not communicating from a place of what is the company trying to do right now, and how am I solving a specific problem, as opposed to just proposing something else that's distracting. So that's why I'm saying that's actually not ideal for promotion necessarily. But let's just try applying those influence styles and see if there's like an alternate approach. So what about having a conversation first? And actually, what if I started off by listening to the tech lead, senior engineer, CEO, and asking like, what problem are you trying to solve this quarter or this year? And actually, like, mostly just saying, hey, I'm excited in my free time to go above and beyond. I want to build another feature. I've got some Android, Jetpack libraries that I think would be really cool for us. What would you like me to build? How can I help you? This is basically the, inspiring maybe is the wrong word, but basically I'm trying to think from the other person's perspective. How could I help them? And just trying to look at the slides. Yeah, okay, so then the last option is also bringing together peers as well to take a look at a proposal for a new feature. And so I think that going back to that first year or two at the company, it would have made a lot of sense for me to have one-on-one coffee chats where I just talk with other more senior engineers on the team and chat with them about like some things that I'm thinking of, and really ask them, what problems are you trying to solve? How can I help with your projects? And then also, together build a plan forward that we present to the tech lead and the company as a unit. And yeah, Alex, I appreciate the comments as well. Probably not the best idea to overhaul the entire, refactor the entire UI. So I think that actually by having those conversations and listening to more senior folks on the team would have made a smoother transition into actually getting, just a small feature shipped as a junior engineer, as opposed to trying to change everything. But what I see with myself is I was asserting we should do this as opposed to listening and building a coalition from there. So next example is, what if I'm an individual contributor and I want to talk about promotion. So again, we can ask for $100 and and we can just say, hey, it's important for me to get promoted. That doesn't have anything to do with them. Well, okay, it does have something to do with managers' goals, and they should be interested in having that conversation with you. But if we think of it maybe in a scenario where it's not a manager who's really thinking from your perspective, this is asserting as opposed to, well, let's just look at the after. So another option, instead of talking about it from your perspective, is actually talking about it from the manager's perspective, focusing on what are our team goals that are actually our manager's KPIs that are going to help them get promoted and help our team shine overall. And as a result, oh, by the way, I just want to, also be sure that my promotion is worked in as a result of that. And, start with their goals, make it a discussion. So that's just the alternative approach where it's listening, and it's built on also probably a good relationship with your manager to begin with. Cool. Two more examples I have here are from the manager perspective. And essentially, I just want to take a moment to talk about leadership without authority versus leadership with authority. I think that in general, using authority, even if you have authority, you don't have to use it. You could instead maybe inspire or have an alternative approach to, commanding or just telling people what to do. Because again, how does that have to do with their goals? Just telling someone to do something because you outrank them doesn't really have to do with what their goals are. So I think that here rationalizing is what I fall into often. And I've got some data. I explain why it's going to help the users and company. And I think that's a good approach, and that's kind of expected and like a very standard option. But if I can explain how it helps the users and also tie it back to like a promotion that we just had a conversation about, or something about a new technology they want to do. It starts with, as a manager, listening to someone and knowing what they actually want to do. And of course, it's not expected to work nights and weekends, but I'm just saying the point is people are very excited if they're working on something that actually lines up with their needs and values beyond the company's, because that's kind of indirect, something that's intrinsically exciting. So that would be, from my perspective, applying the influence style to talking about a piece of work that like a direct report would have to do. Okay, last one, which I'm really working on right now, is I need to coordinate cross-team with another, another whole team, department, set of stakeholders. And my approach in the last year has essentially been, hey, this is blocking us, please help. And that doesn't really get people to be very super interested in helping. And so I took this hone class, and I'm literally rethinking my approach. So number one, taking time out of my schedule to actually say hi, introduce myself, and get to know them. Be able to learn about the team that I'm asking and what their priorities are and what their goals are, what is their mission, as opposed to thinking about our own. And then after that, maybe form a coalition, talk to some other teams, get a proposal together that helps the other team's goals and has other folks already lined up. So I'm doing a lot of the legwork here. And ultimately discussing it at that point to come to them with like a relationship already established. I've already listened to the mission and values of the other team, trying to solve problems that are on their plate, and I've lined up other folks to help with it. And I think that basically the principles here, building trust, listening, and thinking about the other team, the other manager, the other folks' goals, and not like my own teams. So I guess my last slide is, nope, this is not the last slide, but just want to recap what we discussed here. So if at all possible, building those relationships before you need them, whether it's reaching out on LinkedIn or asking for a promotion or asking someone to do something for you, it's really helpful to already have that trust. And then you don't have to assert it. You can, for instance, inspire, have a coalition. If you just have data, that's also great. And I think there's a time and a place for each option. But ultimately coming from a place of listening and trust and thinking about, not just listening to listen, but listening to actually work on their goals and their mission. And then just to recap, these are the influence styles. So I think, if at all possible, inspiring or having a coalition I've been finding that to be more helpful. And just want to thank Hone for their class.